While all content on Nightmind should only be approached by those with the fortitude and maturity to experience horror media, some may find this year's SCP Vault to be particularly potent. For any who are aware that the concepts of severe hauntings, malicious forces, and entrapment are especially distressing to their senses, it is with total seriousness that I must warn you this year's Vault Special is not for the faint of heart. For those who do choose to proceed, just keep reminding yourself, it's only a story. Another October, another SCP Vault. Good traditions stand strong, and this year, we're on our 8th installment. My contacts at the Foundation and the Socialize, Communicate, and Publicize initiative are admittedly a little excited this year. They've known to be on the lookout for anything leading up to October that fits our mutual needs, but our premier item is one they knew would work immediately after its discovery last year. Currently undergoing item number classification, I would like to present to you what the research team dedicated to its study are calling the Ghostwriter. It is a Royal Magic Margin model typewriter, precise year unknown, but resembles several models released in the early 1940s. Upon containment, its condition could be considered clean, maintained, and well-loved. After containment, condition rapidly deteriorated, resulting in a state of degradation expected if kept in subpar storage. Investigation of containment conditions revealed no environmental factors to attribute to such a state. The Ghostwriter was discovered after the watchdog arm of Mobile Task Force Chi-9, the Page Turners, detected a potential leak pertaining to SCP Items in a new novel by an indie author on the rise. When questioned by a Foundation agent under the cover of working for a New York-based mainstream publisher, the author revealed they had several new drafts in the works after conducting a writing productivity period unlike any working season they'd experienced before, as if they'd literally conjured a muse somehow. Investigation revealed the author's muse was the as-yet numbered SCP item, the Royal Magic Margin typewriter, which they'd purchased from an antique shop at discount years prior and had taken vacation time to restore. In testing whether or not it would function after restoration, they found the typewriter to be in flawless executive condition, and it was as if it came with a story inside it already, as the letters flowed from their mind. The first story written with the typewriter took them just 4.5 days to complete. I swear, it's like time itself was on my side, they informed Foundation agents. The manuscript needed few revisions, and the copying process was the only mundane experience. The anomalous activity continued promptly following online publication of the first story. In short time, the author had several drafts, ranging from short stories to novels, and initial offerings for agents to read revealed the tales concerned anomalies known to the Foundation. Due to the damage potential of information leaks, Chi-9 was immediately charged with investigation into the scope of the manuscripts. Cross-references across the wider skipnet turned up a consistent discovery. Every item identified within the writer's drafts had either been submitted for consideration of public awareness classification by the Socialize, Communicate, and Publicize initiative, or were already in the process of approvals. The first novel written with the typewriter was published online approximately 24 hours after an email within the Socialize, Communicate, and Publicize initiative was sent granting final approval of public awareness regarding the item at the center of the story. To reduce risk of identification, details about the settlement with the author have not been shared with me, but it's been assured it was very charitable to help deal with the upset regarding the Ghostwriter material and an immediately halted career trajectory. It's unknown whether the settlement has also helped them come to terms with knowing their breakthrough work was co-authored by an anomalous force. I haven't been granted clearance to read all the work, but it's been decided that items cleared for public knowledge in the collection fitting my criteria this October are allowed to premiere with us. That's right, we're getting to tell people first. Exclusive premiere rights for our SCP Vault tradition. An anecdote though, before we get into it. While Socialize, Communicate, and Publicize is a directive conceived and controlled by the Foundation, some of the doctors are considering the possibility of a wider anomaly affecting the initiative that's creating outlets for dissemination of items given clearance. This is not the first time things have just oddly lined up with the initiative's process or indicated information spread beyond their oversight. I've been given clearance to let you know that as part of their decisions on public safety. It's believed there will be potential sources of information related to Foundation items disguised as other media under the activity of this suspected anomaly, and the Foundation urges that clear for public knowledge does not mean clear for replication or interaction. If it seems like an anomaly, keep treating it as fiction to enjoy in passing, not in acting out. Now, all that being said, are you ready to begin? The first manuscript is a novel-length haunted mansion tale. Classic, to be sure, yet sliding away into a chillingly unexpected direction. In the Foundation brief, there's a surprise about the number assignment. The anomaly is listed as a unique phenomenon affecting the existing spectral activity on the grounds of the Burnley Estate, and not the haunted estate itself. According to the background file, the Foundation became aware of the Burnley Estate and its reputation for anomalous activity in 1961 during investigations into the larger community of Pollinsby, Mississippi. The town of 17,000 was historically known as a hub for anomalies since the 19th century. In-depth investigation attempts were blocked by public officials, many of whom were closely associated with the Burnley family. The Burnleys are a dynasty of occultists, socialites, alchemists, and astrologers formerly prominent in the American South. The most relevant was Lyle Allen Burnley, a heresiographer active in the 20th century and responsible for the downfall of his family. Lyle Burnley's death in 1978 resulted in the surrender of the Burnley Estate to the Pollinsby municipal government for the creation of a public park, as per the terms of his last will and testament, after the removal of several corpses from the grounds. The Foundation halted the transfer to investigate long-standing reports of ghosts inhabiting the house, colloquially known as Elaline. The vast majority of reports were found to be true, but the functional risk and significance of each spectral entity was low enough not to warrant SCP designation or dedicated containment. Elaline was placed under low-priority outsourced containment, with Burnley's surviving family, already well acquainted with anomalies, serving as caretakers, subject to annual certification from Foundation staff with ESP abilities. This model of containment worked with only minor interruption until 1999, at which point no members of the Burnley family resided at Elaline. The building had fallen into disrepair over time, and Foundation staff noted that formerly stable spectral entities were acting erratically and violently. Mobile Task Force Mu-13 was dispatched to investigate. A timeline is provided of Mu-13's exploration, consisting of 4 agents. It's noted that upon arrival, the house was dark, except for a single light in a third-story window. The temperature was cold inside the building. The foyer was coated in a thick layer of dust. Floorboards creaked as Mu-13 explored the first floor and placed surveillance equipment. Operations proceeded as normal until the team encountered a door that wouldn't open. Reports were given to command of a muffled breathing audible beyond it. Their first encounter with SCP Item 6274-A. A ceiling ward was placed on the door, and the team moved on. 2 dining halls on the first floor of the estate were in total disarray, one set for a lavish candlelit feast consisting of rotten and decomposing food. Completed examination of the first floor revealed no further concerns, and the team moved to return to the foyer, passing the previously sealed door along the way. The ward was absent and dust had kicked up around the door. Now a touch apprehensive, Mu-13 restored the ceiling ward, placed surveillance equipment, and proceeded to the Great Hall. In the center, an unidentified figure was seen standing on a large center table, partially disemboweled, glowing with a slight orange light. Command was instructed to ignore the visual and continue exploration. In the western wing, several rooms were sealed from within. One unlocked bedroom contained several lit candles arranged around the room, illuminating a 4-poster bed with curtains drawn and tied. Attempts to open the curtains were unsuccessful. Surveillance equipment was placed. At this point, no member of Mu-13 or Command realized an agent was no longer present. The team moved to the second floor, locating a fuse box. They restored power to the mansion. The events of the next 22 minutes are redacted from the record. 2 agents awaken outside the building in the garden shed. One is holding an item designated 6274-1. Exiting the shed, the agents find the gardens deeply overgrown, and the central bed contains a large flowering tree with a human body embedded in the trunk. Its roots dig into the soil, undulating. It takes the pair 17 minutes to reach the main building. The main kitchen is covered in a sticky, tar-black fluid. The agents exit into the dining hall with decomposing food, an impossible circumstance according to Command's map of the building. The table now features the cadaver of the agent who was first separated from the group. The pair of living agents rush to the Great Hall, passing the sealed door marked with a ward, which now features a single, spindly finger protruding from under the door. According to the record, the cow is no longer present in the Great Hall, marking more potential anomalous effects on the cognition of the command team. An unidentified body hangs from the rafters, slowly swinging from side to side. One remaining agent draws her sidearm. The record of events over the next hour and 26 minutes is redacted. One agent's corpse is recovered from the porch at dawn, along with item 6274-1, a bound manuscript written by Lyle Allen Burnley, titled Our Hauntings, composed with a typewriter. Burnley's manuscript is largely a memoir of time spent in Elaline, recounting its spectral history, with several of his personal anecdotes included. 71 entities are described in the text, but only 3 have been observed by the Foundation through containment of the manor, largely thanks to the surveillance equipment placed by Mu-13. These 3 were described as the Feast, the Brood, and the Totem. Item 6274-A, first encountered by Mu-13 during investigation, has no description within Burnley's manuscript. According to Lyle Burnley, the Feast is an entity inhabiting the Silverton dining room, among the most docile of those that inhabit our home. It is an arrangement of delicacies and perfectly cooked meats with aged wines and all manner of side dishes. Roasted hams, seared steaks, cooked goose and veal. The exact contents change regularly. I remember Arthur and I at breakfast making a game of guessing what would be on the table by nightfall. He adored the room nearly as much as I. Like many other revenants in Elaline, it seeks only to live in happy coexistence with the current generation of Burnleys inhabiting the home. For the Feast, this means providing delicious food and the enjoyment that comes from a full belly. After much time in the family's archives in the library, I ventured forth to guess that the Feast was once Abraham Burnley, a noted gastronome and gourmet, dead in 1845. Foundation observations using surveillance equipment following the loss of Mu-13 revealed the following activity in the Silverton room. Regularly and erratically changing the arrangement and spread with no apparent schedule, exclusively producing rotten, decomposing, maggot-ridden, or otherwise inedible food, on 2 occasions producing a carved human corpse as the centerpiece of the meal, food and drink being violently thrown across the room, where it remains until the next change, several times producing food containing razor blades, shrapnel, and live termites. A trusted Foundation medium was taken onto the new task force to conduct a seance in the Silverton room in order to commune with the Feast. Despite sitting with a carving of undulating, decomposing venison, she performed admirably and immediately, sensing a new anomaly. "Something is wrong," she said, then paused as a light shone through a glass on the table darkly. A voice spoke. "There is no spirit to be found here. Only absences. Only nothing. They don't see. Only you see. Nothing is not a something. There is nothing to be afraid of in the dark." The medium replied, "Yes, yes. Revenant, what are you afraid of?" It answered, "The cellar can only be opened by the masters of the house. Look below." The curtains flew open, revealing a change with them. The table spread had been replaced with several hundred glasses of wine. No activity occurred in the feast room after this moment. On the spectral entity known as the Brood, Burnley wrote, "None of the revenants in Burnley Manor are dangerous, but a fair few simply wish to be left alone. The Brood is one of these. I have no idea how old it is. I have asked everyone and searched the bottom of the archives, but no one seems to know where it came from. Presumably, it does not predate the creation of the Western Wing itself in 1798, but who can say for certain? The Brood takes the form of a woman in the throes of childbirth in her bedchambers. She screams, cries, and generally spurns visitors, reasonably enough. The curtains open for only a few seconds, but in those seconds any questions you ask the poor thing are answered with all the truth of the universe. My father was right. Knowledge is not a burden a child should bear. Not a day goes by where I do not remember Matilda weeping as she hugged me. Foundation surveillance recorded the following in the room where the Brood was said to reside. Constant weeping in a low tone. No screaming, crying, or otherwise producing loud sounds. No opening of the curtains. Small objects occasionally hurled against the wall outside the bed. All candles in the room momentarily dimming. The Foundation medium was brought to the Brood's room to conduct another communion. Immediately, an antique baby rattle was thrown through the bed curtains, clattering to the floor. The Brood whispered to the medium, asking for help. "Help you with what, Revenant?" she replied. Nothing's coming out," the Brood whispered. "My family is no longer in this house. Where have you taken them?" The medium assured her they hadn't done anything with her family. Suddenly, the Brood stopped whispering, instead yelling, Oh, it's finally coming. Get the gun." The Brood then screamed for several seconds. All the candles surged and snuffed themselves out. The record read, "A light shines through a glass, darkly." A newly discovered voice spoke. "You are talking to a shell." The medium recognized it from the seance with the feast. It ignored the identification, going on. "You are wasting your time with ghosts of ghosts. There is something greater to fear. Something larger that is coming. Elaline is a microcosm of an example. There is something eating away at the Burnley Manor. There were once hundreds of ghosts in the estate. Now there are none. You have 2 questions to answer. What can kill a ghost? And what does a ghost leave behind?" "You can't kill a ghost," the medium answered. "Then where is your Brood?" the voice asked. The candles all relit simultaneously, and the curtains of the bed opened, revealing a blackened, charred mass. It twitched, then fell still. No activity was recorded from the Brood since that moment. On the topic of the totem, Lyle Burnley wrote the following. "I remember long afternoons spent running through the gardens with my brothers and sisters. The groundskeeper hated us, how we would ruin his perfectly tended shrubs. Then we'd be called in for dinner by the maid and wolfed down the feast before spending the evening lounging beneath the totem. My grandfather sat me on his lap and told me its story one day. His own grand-uncle had done a service for the people that still dominated our land back then. The specifics of the service are unclear to me, but it was great enough that when he died, they paid their debt, and he came back as a sapling in the grounds of the garden that he loved so much. The fruit he produced were one of a kind, a large round thing the size of your fist with a thick purple skin and a juicy red inside. He was our eldest family member. We adored his stories, regaling us with cowboy tales, and he was a tree in spirit, happy to watch the world grow around him." The Foundation record of surveillance activity goes as follows. Using prehensile vines to catch and consume small animals, releasing an unknown substance into the soil, turning it to corrosive mud, attacking nearby personnel unprovoked, dragging prey into its soil, digesting them for nutrients. Due to the danger of physical proximity to the totem, the medium communicated via microphone. Immediate reaction from the totem was to unwrap vines from its trunk to strike the device, only stopped by request from the medium. "Can you speak?" she asked. "Speaking is a waste," the totem answered. "You are Burnley," the medium continued. "One of the first." "Whatever was here once may have been a Burnley." "And now?" "A Burnley-shaped hole," the totem replied. "The absence of familiarity." "Do you know what has happened here?" "This house was once filled with spirits, memories enduring after demise. The Burnley clan was beyond death." "What changed?" The totem answered. "A light shone through a glass, darkly." The new anomaly's voice came through. "Something cosmic turned its eyes on a family in Mississippi, leaving behind nothingness in its wake. Look to the skies, little one." Following the confirmation of a new anomaly affecting the grounds, the Foundation communicated with Laura Norman, the daughter of Lyle Allen Burnley. She had made great efforts to divorce herself from the family name after being disowned, making it difficult to establish contact. An interview with Laura made it clear that living with ghosts was not exceptional to a Burnley. The children thought of ghosts as the bedroom you could go into if you wanted to be alone, or the spirit that'll tell you a secret if you bring it a cup of tea. When asked about Lyle disowning her, she said it was because he loved her. "He set me free the only way he knew how," Laura explained. "But here I am, back again, and you still haven't explained what's wrong with the place." The doctor conducting the interview explained the situation to Laura, who was as confused as the Foundation medium. None of the ghosts had ever been violent, she said, and for them to leave. "I don't understand," she said. "Those revenants are as much a part of the estate as the walls." The doctor explained that communication was attempted prior to the final disappearances of the revenants, with claims of being scared and mentions of a wine cellar. Laura Norman paused for a moment, then replied, "We don't have a wine cellar." Ultrasound investigation was conducted of the grounds in order to ascertain the possibility of a physical wine cellar, which revealed the presence of 3 objects buried 2 meters deep a distance away from the house. An excavation team dug up the surrounding ground, recovering 3 decomposing bodies. DNA testing identified them as Henry, Arthur, and Matilda Burnley, the other 3 children of Lyle Allen Burnley. They had been dead for less than 6 months. A final investigation into the estate was authorized, now including Laura Norman, the last of the Burnley line. She would be proceeding alone in her childhood home, carrying only a flashlight, microphone, and camera. Upon conducting the investigation, no anomalies prevented her from reaching the previously non-existent wine cellar, SCP-6274-A, with the spindly protruding finger still extended below the door, tapping the ground. "I don't remember this door," Laura said. "It's not in your father's notes or any of the blueprints either," the conducting doctor replied. Laura placed her hand on the knob, and the finger below retracted. She opened the door into a descending staircase, cast in darkness. Through the camera, it was obvious that even the flashlight couldn't pierce it. "Can you feel anything?" the doctor asked over the radio. "Just the rails," Laura answered. "It's cold. It's really cold." "That's okay. You're doing great. Just keep going." "Yeah. I didn't know there was a wine cellar underneath the house. Wait. No. I do. I remember a wine cellar. Just not this one. Dad and he took me down into the cellar once. I was 4. but the entrance was outside of the house then. He showed me the empty space and told me he was going to turn it into a juice factory. He didn't like to talk about alcohol in front of us. Laura reached the bottom of the staircase. She informed the doctor, who asked if her visuals were any better. Nothing. There's nothing down here. Is it just empty? The doctor asked. No, there's literally nothing. Nothingness. It's... Oh God. There's no wine cellar. Just like there are no ghosts in the manor anymore. They're just holes. The spaces where things used to be. I'm afraid I don't understand, the doctor said. Something is eating my family, Laura whispered. This is what's left. Nothing. This is what we leave behind. Silence followed. A minute of nothing. Then, a voice. There is nothing to be afraid of in the dark. Dad? Laura asked. There, the recording ends. A final passage from Lyle Allen Burnley's manuscript is included in the article. It reads as follows. I was looking through my archives just the other day when I came across an old journal of mine from an expedition into the Iron Eye. They have a rich and ancient culture, and as with all cultures, the aspect of mysticism and spirituality was strong. I shared my knowledge of certain histories and heresies, and was provided with their own stories in turn. One story was of a man whose father had been killed in battle. It was told by a shaman that his father's spirit, his revenant, was watching over him, and would continue to do so for his son and his son's son and so on. He was comforted by this knowledge. Many years later, the man was subject to a curse from a rival house, something to plague misfortunes upon his family. In those weeks, he felt a presence by his side, one he did not even realize was there, change. Morph from something to nothing, like a black hole on his shoulder, constantly pulling. The unignorable presence of nothingness. The shaman told him plainly, his father's spirit was no longer the thing walking by his side. It troubles me. I have seen what my forefathers have left behind. I leave behind 4 wonderful children and 2 wives. I leave behind a body of work as impressive as any scholar of the paranormal. But my children have no interest in the occult. The family secrets will die with me. Whatever I leave behind will be a harbinger of things to come. The next manuscript is somewhere between a long short story and a short novella. No official title was written, just a working reference composed of 3 letters. DLU. This story concerns SCP Item 5421, but was discovered through its side item 5421-A, a standard 1-bedroom condominium in Nagoya, Japan. September 22nd, 2018. The door to Aiko Fujiwara's condo is found open by an employee of the building owner investigating resident complaints of a foul odor. Inside, Fujiwara's bloated corpse is discovered on the floor, showing signs of exsanguination. Immediate investigation by police estimated Fujiwara's time of death as being 10 days prior. Impossible for the circumstances, having just moved in 5 days before. Foundation contacts within the department made a call to the local Japanese branch. Upon arrival, the building was shut down, and the Foundation enabled protocols to evacuate residents and employees under the guise of normal concerns to examine Fujiwara's unit. 3 members of Mobile Task Force Psi-7, Home Improvement, were sent in for threat assessment under the direction of Site-44. All video footage was broadcast live to HQ, who had set up in the lobby. The Mobile Task Force cleared the hallway before entering the unit. Interior was seen as disorderly. Plastic wrappers strewn across the floor, refrigerator door open, 3 empty 1-liter bottles of water on the table. A flat-screen TV lay broken on the floor. The corpse of Aiko Fujiwara remained where it was first discovered. Eyes and ears showed self-inflicted damage and evidence of exsanguination in the dried blood beneath the body. Found in one hand was a crumpled piece of paper. Written in Japanese, the message was largely obscured by smeared marker ink. What was legible was a name: the Houseman. "You think that's our bogey?" one task force member asked. "I don't jump to conclusions, but I think it is," the agent reading replied. "There's an inscription here on the top left, too. Oba-chan. She got it from her grandmother? Says something like that." The sound of a churning liquid came from above. One task force member looked up. "Comb the rooms," the commanding agent directed. Psi-7 spread out, securing the kitchen, the bathroom, and the bedroom. The last was a source of information: a laptop and phone left on the bed. The agent who made this discovery noted, "I feel like we're being watched." They turned suddenly, facing the other task force members. "You hear that?" "Hear what, Yelena?" one asked. "I felt eyes up there." She pointed up, above the doorway to the bedroom. The wall contained nothing out of the ordinary. The possibility of a hallucinatory anomaly was raised, which the commanding agent acknowledged before directing the task force to work on the tech left on the bed. One agent was charged with scrolling the laptop, the other with uploading the phone's data to HQ. "The laptop seems to be open. Thank God it's still got some juice in it. Running through files now," Agent 3 said. "Transfers completed," Agent 2 added, placing the phone down. "Found some audio files too. Looks like she kept a diary." Suddenly, the bedroom door creaked open. A deep, masculine voice groaned. All operatives of Psi-7 looked in the direction of the door. "That's definitely our bogey," Agent 1 said. 3, keep on that laptop. 2, what did you say? Agent 2 said there was audio, but they didn't understand Japanese. The commanding agent instructed the other two to swap places. Agent 3 listened for a moment before translating. "He's in the walls. He's in the ceiling. I can hear him laugh. He's watching me. He's playing with me. I don't know what he is, but he's playing with me." Agent 2 spoke up then. "Boss, I found something in the videos folder." He presented the laptop to Agent 1. Blurry hidden camera footage of Fujiwara in the bedroom began to play. A pair of black eyes watched her from above the bed as she slept. Halfway in, Fujiwara woke, making eye contact. Immediately, the eyes contorted into an expression of anger, then disappeared 3 seconds later. The same sound of churning liquid was heard in the room. Agent 1 turned around. "Boss," Agent 2 said. "It's behind you, isn't it?" "Keep calm now," 1 ordered. "Keep calm." A laugh was heard from above. Silence intervened for 3 seconds. "1," Agent 3 muttered. "We need to get out of here." The bedroom door closed. Agent 1 seized the handle and tried to open it. No movement. The door to the hall outside slammed with a bang. "Look down, now," Agent 1 ordered. The team trained their eyes on the floor. Agent 1 kept speaking. "Stop. Don't look up. Don't look up. Don't look up. Don't look up." The sound of churning liquid came again, stronger now. Heavy breathing followed. Through Agent 2's camera, a finger could be seen tracing a long line down one's back. At the same time, on 3's camera, a long black arm could be found caressing 2's spine. Both disappeared after several seconds. SCP-5421 spoke in Japanese in a playful manner. "Look up, my pretties," 3 translated. "Look up. Look up." "Go fuck yourself," 2 retorted. 2, stand down. 3, can you bargain with it? 3 spoke in Japanese, prompting a rippling sound behind them. A long, dark arm extended from the wall, caressing her cheek. She shivered but kept speaking. Finally, SCP-5421 responded, giggling. "What did he say?" one asked. "That we're so beautiful, that we shouldn't have caught him, that he can't wait to starve us, to watch us wither, and to torment us." "Okay," one said. "Okay. So long as we don't look up, we're okay." Flowing water was heard from above. 5421 laughed and spoke. "He says, 'Fine,'" 3 reported. Agent 1 raised his right hand. "Everyone, arm." The flowing sound increased in volume as Psi-7 reached for their weapons. "Ready?" one asked. "Don't look up. Fire at will." Together, the task force emptied an entire magazine into the ceiling. After all rounds were fired, they stood in silence for a moment, waiting for anything. "Is it dead, boss?" 2 asked. A notification came from the laptop. Keeping his head down, 2 turned to see a window without a close button appear on the screen. A live feed of the bedroom. The sound of running water was heard again. Agent 2 was unable to turn from the screen as SCP-5421 came into full view. The sound of a door locking echoed before recording abruptly stopped. Foundation personnel arrived 2 minutes after the video feed cut. The door was ajar. All members of the task force within were dead, executed with their own weapons. No other marks were present on their bodies. The audio diary was transcribed in the immediate aftermath. In her entries, Fujiwara spoke of her grandmother's sudden passing and the inheritance of several old journals and 1 old necklace, picked up on a secret mission for the government when she was 21 from Hokkaido. One particular journal needed to be worked on physically. Several of its pages stuck together for some reason. Entries detailed her grandmother hearing a legend while in Hokkaido, an obscure folktale about the House Man. He was said to live in ceilings and swim in them, peeking on young men and women and playing with them. He'd lock them in their rooms and watch them die once they discovered he was there. Fujiwara said, "The Ainu used to sprinkle salt at their door whenever they remembered or were told about him, for fear that he'll come after their children once they remember." On the day she moved into the apartment, Fujiwara noted the new place was noisy. She could hear water, like a leaking pipe. She also noted having already somehow misplaced her clothes in the hamper. The next day, she swore something brushed up against her leg, solid and cold, like dead fingers, and mentioned the leaking pipe was getting worse. A nightmare, too, had disturbed her sleep. A voice whispering in her ear. Something breathing down her neck. Fingers tracing lines down her legs. Fujiwara's next few days recorded more activity. Black stains on the clothes in her closet, heavy breathing, lights acting up, and over that water sound, finally resulting in a warm drop falling on her face, waking her. She then remembered the spirit described in her grandmother's journal. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? And still, she installed a camera in her bedroom. At last, Fujiwara saw him, just as the mobile task force witnessed on the laptop. Her torment began in earnest. Attacks from the walls, keeping her awake, keeping her from eating, grabbing at her when least expected. Her final desperate day was spent between rage and sorrow, as the houseman told her he was going to watch her die. Fujiwara's final message to any potential listener: sprinkle the salt at the doorstep. Forget the houseman. Don't try to find out what he is. And most importantly, don't look up. Sometimes the shortest of stories can be the most impactful. Our next manuscript is one such case, a tale titled Unearth, inspired by SCP-3515. According to the Foundation brief, SCP-3515 is a charcoal drawing on paper fitted in a wooden frame. The drawing depicts a barren landscape with a large knotted willow tree in the foreground, at the crest of a hill of bare earth. The artist and date of creation are unknown. Persons spending more than 1 hour in close proximity to SCP-3515, within a range of approximately 5 meters, will be subject to low-volume auditory hallucinations described as the sound of slow, steady digging. In noise comparison tests, subjects have most commonly matched SCP-3515-induced hallucinations with recordings of manual digging with a metal shovel in heavy clay soil. If an affected individual is no longer in proximity to SCP-3515, these auditory hallucinations cease. If an individual enters slow-wave sleep, stage 3 of non-REM sleep, while in proximity to 3515, that individual will spontaneously dematerialize. Dematerialization will include clothing and other objects physically attached to the individual. No further evidence is available of the location of civilians presumed to have been affected by this phenomenon. In Foundation experimentation, the most notable test to date has been Experimental Protocol 3515-C1, conducted with a single test subject, D6042. He was fitted with a GPS tracking device, a head-mounted camera and microphone, and a transmitter. D6042 was left to sleep in the same room as SCP-3515. After natural sleeping patterns occurred, 6042 reached the state of slow wave necessary for the anomalous effect to occur, and dematerialized with all devices attached except the electrodes of an EEG. There was no failure in the equipment attached to 6042, and a signal was broadcast from the GPS. A suburban house with signs of habitation, but current residents absent. Footage of an upstairs bedroom was a match for the feed from 6042's attached camera. He was not present in the bedroom, but remained in position in its look-alike, as if continuing to sleep on its bed. The monitoring team allowed 3 hours of surveillance before attempting to wake D6042. After establishing contact, Dr. Hallard of the command team asked if 6042 recognized the house. "This is my bedroom," he answered. "In my parents' house, I mean. This is my bedroom from when I was a kid. Wow, those are my books." "We have agents in the room with you," Dr. Hallard said. "They can't see you there." "There's no one here with me. How did I get here?" "We're hoping you can help us work that out. You are the first person to document this phenomenon. Could you please have a look around and see if there is anything unusual?" 6042 left his childhood bedroom and proceeded through the house. He reported that even the pictures hanging on the walls were the same. During this time, the family occupying the house on the task force side returned. They were detained and amnesticized, allowing the operation to continue. Meanwhile, 6042 kept exploring the home. "This is so weird. It's just like it was when I was growing up. I fell off that sofa when I was 7, sprained my wrist." "So everything is as you remember," Dr. Hallard said. "Yeah, although a lot quieter with no one here. But otherwise..." "Oh, wait a second. That painting on the far wall? I don't remember that." D6042 approached the painting in question. SCP-3515, hanging on a wall in the living room. "That's the painting from the test. I'm sure we didn't have this at home." "You haven't seen that picture before the test?" Dr. Hallard questioned. "Do you recall having a different painting on the wall when you were a child?" "No, I don't remember. But I haven't seen this picture before today, I'm sure. Looks the same to me. Although, I can't say for sure, but maybe the noise is a little bit louder." "The digging sound?" Dr. Hallard asked. "Yes." "Okay, we'll make a note of that. Keep an eye out for any other differences. In the meantime, could you please open the curtains? We'd like to look outside." D6042 stepped over to the nearest set of curtains and pulled them apart. The exterior of the window appeared obscured. "Weird," 6042 commented. "It's like it's covered in mud, or like..." He trailed off, then let go of the curtain. 6042 ran to the front door of the house, unlocked it, and attempted to open. it held firm. He kept pulling, leaning away from the door, then using 2 hands. Suddenly it opened, 6042 falling back. "Shit!" he gasped. "Shit!" 6042, talk to us, Hellard instructed. "Are you injured? What's going on?" 6042 stood and faced the front door. The space inside was filled with dark soil, some now spilling onto the floor of the house. "What the hell?" he muttered, then approached. He reached through the doorway, pulling at the dirt, trying to gauge its depth. Clumps after clumps fell to the floor, and more dirt spilled into the gap. 6042 backed away, then moved rapidly through the kitchen and other rooms, throwing open the curtains and opening windows. In every instance, the same sight. Deep, dark dirt, pressed against every surface. "What the fuck?" he gasped. "What the fuck?" "Please try to remain calm," Dr. Hellard instructed. "Fuck that!" 6042 shouted. He ran upstairs, ignoring the instructions coming over the radio. Again, he flew to every room, throwing aside curtains, opening windows. Dirt. 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 Growing more agitated, 6042 returned to the kitchen. He seized a wooden chair and threw it at a window. It broke, and dark earth spilled through the cracks. D-6042 fell to a sitting position, staring at the window. "You buried me," he said, shuddering. "You fucking bastards. You buried me." In a moment of silence from the monitoring team, 6042 removed the camera and headset. GPS tracking followed his movements throughout the home over the next several hours. When contact resumed, Dr. Hallard's greeting was cut short. "Shut up," 6042 snapped. "You have to get me out of here. I've looked everywhere I can, and it's the same. This whole place is covered in dirt. Doors, windows, I even checked the basement. And behind it there's just more dirt. So you have to get me out, okay?" "We're going to help you," Dr. Hallard said. "We will." "Please," 6042 pleaded. "We will. Now, have you eaten?" 6042 sniffed and said he had. There was food in the kitchen. The tap water was running too, so he'd been able to drink. He hadn't slept though, and wanted to know how long he had until he ran out of air. Hallard reported that the house was large enough to keep 6042 alive in terms of oxygen and carbon dioxide buildup. They could even keep the air ventilating, which could buy 6042 weeks of time. Dr. Hallard encouraged him next to sleep, ideally in the living room. At first hesitant, 6042 relented and slept for several hours in the presence of SCP-3515's painting. No change occurred in the situation. Meanwhile, the monitoring team hatched a plan based on all information available to them. There was no reaching the home via phone. Their only device connections were with whatever was on 6042 at the time of dematerialization. The television within the home, according to him, could be viewed, but there was no live TV, only pre-recorded programs. Within the basement, a garden shovel was found and battery-powered lighting. The monitoring team took stock of what else in the home could be put to use and instructed 6042 on building a makeshift ventilation system. He would then eat and sleep, and the following morning head to the window in the attic to begin digging a tunnel to the surface. Fans would run throughout a track meant to keep circulating air, and dirt would be piled on a toboggan to be taken to the basement. D-6042 and the monitoring team spoke every now and then, passing the time and keeping up morale with conversation. He would work in this fashion for as long as possible before needing sleep. On the second day, D-6042 reported striking something hard. Excited, he dug in with his hands, partially freeing the object. He brushed away clumps of dirt, revealing a white shape. Bone. "That's okay," Dr. Hallard said. "You'd expect bones underground, wouldn't you?" "No," 6042 answered. No. It's not right, James. Do you know why? I've been digging and digging, but there's nothing here. No worms, no bugs, nothing that lives underground. No moles, nothing. So if they aren't here, why is there a bone? Let's take a closer look, okay? See what we can learn about it, Hallard offered. 6042 pulled more dirt away, excavating the bone, longer than expected, and soon revealing the skeletal remains of a human foot. He scrambled back out of the tunnel and into the house. The monitoring team attempted to communicate, but were ignored, and the headset abandoned for 2 hours. Upon return, 6042 went into the tunnel with the shovel. 45 minutes later, he picked up the headset. I told you. Are you there? Yes, we're here, Hallard confirmed. What did you tell us? I'll show you. This place is... I'll show you. 6042 re-entered the tunnel. Halfway along, he showed the monitoring team a side tunnel he'd been digging. 2 bones protruded from the earth at knee height, resembling a human radius and ulna. 6042 then moved loose dirt on the tunnel floor, uncovering smaller bones. Tell me what the fuck is going on, he demanded. I can't, Hallard confessed. I'm sorry, I don't know what this is. We're doing our best. Your best? D-6042 swung the shovel hard into the tunnel face at shoulder height, digging erratically until a large clump of earth fell. As it hit the tunnel floor, it broke open, revealing a second human hand, partially decomposed. D-6042 retched, then retreated from the tunnel. Labored breathing could be heard for several minutes. 6042? Hallard called softly. Buddy? Are you okay? Please, he replied. You need to do more. I can't. We're doing it. We can see your GPS signal. When you're in the tunnel, at the other end, it's coming from in the garden. We have a team coming. They're going to start digging down towards you. We'll get you out. Please, you have to. We will, but we need you to keep digging up towards us. We'll see on the camera what you're seeing, and we can use that to see how close we are to finding you. No, not more. Not today. Okay, that's okay. We'll start again tomorrow. 6042 spent the rest of the day eating and sitting near the television. Early on the following morning, as D-6042 was climbing to the tunnel entrance, the lights in the house lost power. He radioed in, frantic, trying to confirm that the monitoring team was still there. Hallard assured him of their presence, but couldn't get 6042 to investigate the loss of power. Instead, he dug faster, occasionally disturbing bones or decomposing human remains. The monitoring team, keeping track, privately shared among themselves that D-6042 had uncovered the bodies of at least 12 individuals. Several hours later, 6042 struck another hard object, a decomposing human torso with several exposed ribs. Along the head, some flesh and hair remained. 6042 could smell the decay, a new development. He refused to investigate the body up close, swearing at the monitoring team, and continued to dig erratically. The incline became steeper, and at one point, a decomposing arm fell dangling from the tunnel ceiling. 6042 cut through it, enraged, then kicked it aside and kept digging, burying the limb. Several more hours passed, interrupted by another hard object, a long tree root. Hey, that's a good sign, Dr. Hallard spoke up. It should mean that you're getting near the surface. If you get a bit closer, we can try to work out how near. No, 6042 whispered. No, it's not. I don't like it. It's not right. What's wrong? It looks normal. 6042 kept shaking his head. No. Privately, Dr. Hallard contacted the digging team. They had reached a depth of 20 meters, with no abnormalities, no human remains, no trees or root systems. No sign of 6042 in the home or the earth. For many more hours, 6042 dug, not stopping for food or water. Several tree roots were exposed within the tunnel, along with a disembodied leg. By the time 14 hours of digging had accumulated, the staff had to intervene. They couldn't get 6042 to agree to sleep, but did coax him into a break. "I am pretty tired," he admitted. "Fair enough," Hallard replied. "You've made good progress today, despite it all." "Yeah." "Tell me, what would you like as your first meal when you get back?" "I don't know." "Well, what sort of food do you like? Pizza? A burger?" "Could I get McDonald's, you think? A quarter pounder?" "I'm sure we can arrange that. Just tell us what you like." 6042 admitted he was getting hungry. He returned to the tunnel entrance to collect food and water, ate, and finally relented to the need for sleep. Not downstairs, though. There, in the attic. As he lay down to rest, he spoke to Dr. Hallard. "How long has it been, James?" 4 days, the doctor answered. James, I've been thinking about the tree. The one in the picture. I've been thinking about it a lot. I didn't tell you. I'm sorry. All the time while I'm digging, I think about the picture and the noise and the tree. I think the tree hates me. It hates me." "It's all right," Hallard told him. "You're all right. Don't worry. We're here." "I'm sorry. Maybe it's our team you can hear, digging from above. That could be a good sign." 6042's reply was barely audible. "Maybe." He slept for a few hours, not a full allotment as recommended by the monitoring team, waking with a start. 6042 snapped on the lantern, took the shovel, and rejected directions to go back to sleep. He resumed digging immediately, now tossing shovelfuls of human remains aside with the same regard held for dirt. Eventually, he couldn't ignore the smell, asking why there are so many bodies, then laughing at Hallard's suggestion that he might be under a graveyard. Suddenly, a heavy noise, followed by darkness as the lantern was extinguished. Only 6042's headlamp shone in the tunnel. "Shit! It fell!" he cried. "It fell, James!" The headlamp swiveled, revealing a tunnel collapse to the monitoring team, blocking 6042 from returning to the house. He began to swear profusely, his panic rising. "Stay calm," Hallard instructed. "You can do this. You just have to dig your way back through the collapse section so you can get through." "No, I can't go back," 6042 snapped. "You have to, buddy. You need to dig back to the house. There's not enough air where you are." Sobbing, 6042 shoveled loose earth from the top of the collapsed section. More dirt fell from above, along with a human leg in early stages of decomposition. 6042 retched, but pressed on, forming a new hole. Stable, but with dirt still falling from the ceiling around it. "Come on," Hallard urged. "Keep digging." But the digging stopped. The camera turned abruptly upwards. 6042 gasped. Where the tunnel roof had fallen in, a series of thin tree roots were exposed. Above, there was no dirt. The tree roots extended upwards into empty blackness as far as the headlamp's light could reach. D-6042 dropped the shovel. He scrambled into the low hole dug in the collapsed section, crawling now, pulling the dirt away. Instructions from the monitoring team were ignored. Hallard urged him to stay calm, to take slower breaths, and still 6042 ignored him, digging on his belly, hands bleeding in several places. Half an hour later, He froze. "My foot! Something's got my foot!" "Are you sure?" Hallard asked. "It could just be dirt or more tree roots." "I can't see. It's got my foot." 6042 turned in the cramped space, barely getting on his back and craning his neck to look. "I can't see," he cried, hyperventilating. "I have to get out." He began clawing at the roof of the hole, attempting to dig upwards. "Hey," Hallard tried. "You can't. Listen to me. You have to go forward. The air, it won't." But 6042 didn't slow down. He clawed away the dirt, quickly exposing gray fabric. It began to fall in, revealing it was part of a jumpsuit wrapped around a human torso. Finally, 6042 stopped. "No," he gasped. "What is it?" Hallard asked. It's me. That's my clothes. They're all me." "That doesn't make any sense," Hallard replied. 6042 screamed, a low, guttural, animal panic. He scratched at the clothing on the roof of the tunnel, exposing more of the torso until a partially obscured number was revealed. He clawed frantically at the sides and roof of the hole, exposing the corpse's head. D-6042's lifeless face broke through the dirt, filling the camera's view. He shrieked, attempting to turn as the corpse came fully free, falling on him with all the dirt that surrounded it. Dr. Hallard attempted communication to no avail. For 30 minutes, they listened as 6042's breathing became shallower, then giving way to noises consistent with hypercapnia. 8 minutes later, no sound could be registered. The dig team continued for another 2 hours before ceasing the operation. Over the next 123 hours, D-6042's light and camera continued to operate. The final 5 hours of the film contained sounds consistent with muffled digging, slowly growing louder until, at last, the batteries gave out. One of the items most carefully screened from the Ghostwriter material is a series of scripts suspected to be part of a miniseries. Delivery of all copied information was digital, but came with a special note. If at any point a scan of a ticket or some manner of redeemable document appeared, immediate containment procedures were to be conducted. The scripts describe several scenarios surrounding Foundation Item 342, which normally takes the form of a mass transit ticket for the closest form of mass transportation to its location. When held by a sentient person for any length of time, it will eventually change form into a transit ticket for a form of transportation its holder desires to use. This transformation always takes place when not being directly or indirectly observed. No recordings of SCP-342 changing exist at this time. SCP-342 is indistinguishable from any valid transit ticket and may be used as such. Should 342 be validated by stamp, have its ticket stub torn off, or be disposed of, it will reform itself into an unused ticket after a short period of time. Initial reports surrounding 342 claim that anybody using it to board a vehicle would be unable to exit by any means, and once the vehicle completed its route and ceased movement, the user would disappear. Anomalous effects on users included the following: a mounting feeling of dread prior to boarding the vehicle, increasing during the course of the journey, culminating in panic-inducing terror before disappearance, a perception of increased darkness of the sky outside the vehicle, auditory hallucinations, frequently as misperceptions of normal announcements by drivers and passengers, normal objects and passengers taking a threatening tone or appearance, an intense fear of drivers, conductors, or other transit staff, strange occurrences preventing the rider from exiting the vehicle, inability to perceive other passengers, and inability to hear or perceive attempts to calm or reason with them. Following containment of the object, experiments were carried out in order to ascertain the nature and methodology of the anomaly. One agent reports their experience in Addendum 342-C. Our first experiment with the ticket had a Class D personnel member enter a bus using the object. We stationed agents at each of the stops to observe his behavior without actually entering the vehicle ourselves, a precaution in case everyone who got on was in some way affected. The old reports were vague in this area. Many times he simply sat in place or paced up and down the aisles. Increasingly, he began to stare outside in horror, and the last few times we could not locate him. At the final point before the bus was to be parked for the night, we saw him pounding on the window with a pleading expression, screaming towards the agents for help as it pulled away, a strange mist filling much of the background behind him. As we could not draw many conclusions from this event, we decided to track down some of the passengers and interrogate them to hopefully shed some light on what happened. Many were hesitant to talk or claimed they did not notice anything, saying they were preoccupied by something or distracted by illness, aches, or feelings of foreboding. We finally found some useful information from 3 boys, one 15-year-old and 2 16-year-olds, who were riding the bus near the front for part of the trip. We were told that our test subject had tried to leave several times, but his pulling of the stop bell was always ignored, and the door seemed to close right before he could get out. He would run and just not make it, or walk from a distance and get manipulated into the back of the line. Finally, he sat right at the head of the bus so he could be close enough to get out in time, but every chance he got, there were too many people swarming on or off for him to leave. Something about this event seemed to bother the boys. One of them was particularly irritated, but could not explain the source. Under hypnosis, he described what to him was a moment of pure dread, that he had seen a few people in the crowd of passengers actually push the man back on, subtly hold him back, or trip him, all while staring ahead innocently, like they didn't even notice they were doing it. Finally, after shouting at the driver that he wanted to get off for a good 10 minutes, which the driver ignored, aside from requesting that the subject sit still and be quiet, the man went back to his seat. 2 of the boys said that the man actually shrieked and stumbled back to his seat in fright when the driver turned around. The other didn't realize the 2 were in conflict, which is contrary to his usual habit of avidly looking for and watching fights on the buses. After going back to his seat, the boys said they probably forgot about the subject, most likely because he wasn't struggling anymore. The next time they saw him, he was 3 seats back, then 5, then 7. But at no point could they recall seeing him stand up from his seat to move further back. This was all they could tell us, and it seemed to cost them plenty to even reveal this. A side note, at the end of our session, the youngest teen screamed it was like it swallowed him in the end, and probably had to be hospitalized for extreme psychosis. The next step for Foundation researchers was to conduct an experiment with an agent on board in a more contained environment. A subway was chosen, and Agent Strom was selected to accompany a particularly violent member of D-Class. Immediately after the D-Class used the ticket, Agent Strom found himself struggling with security guards who appeared to be in a trance, attempting to separate him from the subject. He managed to push through, though needed to knock down a security officer to proceed. On the train, the D-Class became unusually quiet. Strom attempted to begin an interview for the record. The D-Class replied once in a soft voice. "Let me off this fucking train." "We can leave after just a few more hours," Strom informed him. The D-Class immediately became aggressive, jumping up and down, kicking off the bars, howling like a primate to be released. Strom subdued the subject, knocking him unconscious and handcuffing him in place. He presented a U.S. Marshal's badge, assuring civilians on board that everything was under control. Physical analysis indicated that the prisoner had entered REM sleep after only 3 minutes, especially unusual in an unconscious individual. After the subject woke, Agent Strom decided to abort the experiment and told the subject that he would help him get off the subway as soon as possible. Holding the D-Class tightly, Agent Strom attempted to lead them off the train, but was prevented by the crowd. Strom attempted to exit a second time at the next stop, taking the precaution of wielding his badge and ordering all passengers to remain in their seats. Still, he was prevented from exiting the vehicle, this time by the crowd boarding the train. Strom reported the prisoner was almost pulled away from him. He was unable to determine by what means, but claimed the hands that pulled him back didn't belong to any passengers. Fortunately, Strom had handcuffed himself to the subject and was able to maintain contact. Now in a state of panic, the prisoner clung to the agent like a frightened child and screamed several times that the handcuffs were slipping off. In the chaos, Strom's badge was knocked out of his hand, and he sustained a blow to the side of the head. During the ride to the third stop, Agent Strom, in a highly aggravated manner, interrogated the new passengers to find out who had hit him. No one would give him any hint or clues, and many became hysterical at the merest question of touch. One woman began wailing when Agent Strom grabbed her shoulder, although she was later silenced when he began shaking her vigorously. Security cameras recorded Strom throwing a male passenger to the floor and striking another in the face while the D-Class personnel wept and clung to his leg. Strom made a third attempt to get the prisoner off the train, choosing a coordinated approach. Using his radio, he communicated with agents at the next stop, fighting against static interference. When questioned later, both sides said they heard the other person talk in a small, quiet voice, reminiscent of a frightened child, they said, despite raising their voices to be heard. The subject began beating on the door, screaming to be let off the vehicle. Agent Strom, though sympathetic, warned him that sedation would follow if he continued. This seemed to dismay the D-Class more than anything else. According to Strom, he stated, "No, that's how it started. A lonely, dark ride in unknown parts of the country. Travelers and drifters, the unattached. They would fall asleep with a bottle of booze and... oh God. When they woke up, they'd still be going. Still be on. Don't you get it? They wake up and even though they slept for hours, they'd still be on. Who knows where?" He then stated his intent to cooperate and curled up in a fetal position, rocking slowly. At the next stop, Agents McAburn, Singular, Smith, and Jacobs boarded the subway, accompanied by Dr. Gunther, the project head. They pushed their way through the crowd towards Strom and the subject. Efforts to intimidate the crowd were unsuccessful until Agent Smith fired his weapon into the ceiling, threatening deadly force. The subway car was evacuated of all other passengers and a protective cordon was placed around the D-Class. Agent Jacobs ordered the driver to shut down the train. When the driver appeared confused, he ordered all power to the subway be cut off. Foundation personnel, in the guise of transit authority officers, evacuated the entire train, platform, and station of civilians. The agents on board the train attempted to lead the prisoner off, but despite all efforts to assure, coax, or force him, there was no success. Strom ceased his attempts after the prisoner was threatened with deadly force by Agent Smith, screaming at his fellow agents, "He's not holding on to anything! There's some kind of wall!" The other agents appeared confused, claiming the subject was maliciously attempting to impede exit by holding onto one of the supporting bars. They continued in this assertion until the impossibility was pointed out, given that both of the prisoners' hands were held by agents at that time. In a last desperate effort to extract the subject, personnel attempted to dismantle the subway around the user through the use of cutting torches and power tools. Agent Strom remained with the subject, while the others exited to help Foundation personnel prepare. While the equipment was being set up and all backs were turned, the doors closed, and the train immediately started, pulling away of its own accord. Agents did not manage to catch it until the next stop, and passengers immediately filed on, despite their commands to halt. Agent Strom was later discovered lying on the subway platform 8 kilometers away in a comatose state. One end of his handcuffs remained attached to his wrist. The other contained traces of blood, identified as the subject's. The prospect of another experiment on SCP-342 was rejected by the team, until Agent Strom's appeal to O5 Council Member 7, offering to be the new test subject. Believing that someone with more knowledge of procedure and a familiarity with the anomaly's progression could succeed, the request was granted. It was decided that Agent Aaron and Dr. Haber, close friends of Strom, would accompany him on the trip. Agent Aaron's presence allowed Strom to remain coherent and sane for the entire length of the ride. He was able to calmly and rationally communicate otherworldly events without breakdown of linguistic and mental functions. Of particular note, Agent Strom made no effort to leave the subway, or even consider the possibility of doing so. This acceptance of his fate may have allowed avoidance of mental anguish. An attempt was still made under these conditions to exit. All 3 personnel walked together, but were assaulted by a homeless man on the train, who hurled Dr. Haber across the cabin, breaking his neck. Agent Aaron drew a firearm and shot the attacker 4 times in the chest. Foundation personnel at the next platform quickly evacuated Haber and the attacker on stretchers. Haber arrived at the emergency medical facility. The attacker's body disappeared from the vehicle while passing under the ruin of a train bridge. Agent Aaron ordered an evacuation of the train, stating his intention to continue alone with Strom. Hallucinations began from this point, with Aaron reporting flickering shadows and strange phenomena. Strom reported more overt hallucinations, including Aaron's face melting to reveal a horned red-faced monster and the metals of the train melting like wax. Aaron said he found it extremely difficult to think logically or concentrate, but persevered to keep talking to an increasingly deranged Strom. This experiment led to the formation of an idea. Whoever used SCP-342 traveled on 2 separate trains. The first was the 4-dimensional vehicle of reality, and the second, a so-called shadow train, overlapped the first. Both trains moved at the same rate, with passengers and personnel perceiving one or the other to various degrees, until the real train arrived at its destination and ceased moving, while the shadow train continued. According to Agent Aaron, shortly after reaching the end of the line, Agent Strom began to slowly drift towards the front of the train, passing through solid material in the process. When pointed out to Agent Strom, he became alarmed and ran to the back of the train. Upon reaching the midpoint of the third-to-last car, Strom began to pound his fist against the air, stating that he was at the end of the train.
"It's moving! It's pulling out of the station!"
he insisted, and claimed he was unable to proceed further. Agent Aaron attempted to halt Strom's progress, but succeeded only in knocking him to the ground, at which point Strom quickly accelerated towards the front of the train, sliding on his stomach. Fingernail tracks were later found in the carpet where he had clawed at the ground, attempting to halt the movement. Agent Strom passed through the closed conductor's door, into the head compartment, and immediately cried out in terror. Agent Aaron drew his service revolver and attempted a benevolent termination of Agent Strom, but was unable to pierce the reinforced glass of the conductor's door. His last visual of Agent Strom goes as follows. "I saw a creature, like an enormous spider, wearing a conductor's hat, looking up from the levers, wrapping Jerry in a web like a cocoon, and then throwing him through the window." The creature then turned towards Agent Aaron and ordered him to exit the train, at which point Agent Aaron lost consciousness from terror. He was later found huddled at the back of the train car with an empty weapon, continuing to pull the trigger on an empty cylinder until the weapon was confiscated by personnel. Dr. Gunther, the research lead on SCP-342, provided several supplemental reports, dissatisfied with testing protocols. Several variations of the experiment were conducted using D-Class. A company bus and driver working for the Foundation were arranged, with the subject as the only passenger. No effect. Unaware citizens were included on the Foundation bus with the subject. No effect. Career drivers were hired to run the bus, empty or full, but all either came up with irrational excuses when presented with a bus or suddenly refused the job. Drivers working regular bus routes were paid to make special pickups of subjects. All once again refused in some form after initially agreeing when the time came to perform the service. Dr. Gunther wrote that they eventually would make a deal with a driver named Bucky Falsworth, who would pick up the subject along his normal route and would only switch with another driver, one from the Foundation, halfway through. Driver Falsworth was offered considerable compensation, told that failure to cooperate would result in his termination from employment, and was instructed to constantly be in contact with the Foundation via radio until reaching the 5th stop, at which point he would park and allow an agent to assume control of the bus. At the 5th stop, the subject holding SCP-342 reported a change to resemble a ticket for the vehicle Falsworth was driving. After realizing this would be another doomed ride, several members of the team cautioned restraint and suggested sending an agent to accompany the D-Class. When Falsworth arrived, he halted the vehicle as instructed, and the subject entered. However, when Falsworth attempted to leave his seat, the brakes failed, allowing the bus to speed down the hill, crushing a little girl crossing the street under its wheels. At first, the team believed this was an attempt by SCP-342 to lash out against them. Shortly after, they understood the important factor at play. When the bus began moving, driver Falsworth was still in command. Attempts to get in contact with Falsworth were unsuccessful for several minutes. When he at last spoke, it was a single word: "No." The task force realized the bus had to be stopped by force. Roadblocks and spike strips were laid out, unsuccessfully puncturing 2 tires and temporarily managing to tip the bus onto its side. Anomalous behavior persisted as the bus managed to proceed onto the highway in this state, then disappeared from trackers while crossing under a bridge. Once relocated, it was discovered the bus was traveling at 130 miles per hour through oncoming traffic. The Foundation subdued local law enforcement and pursued driver Falsworth in their own emergency vehicles. Communication attempts persisted, but only resulted in one long, direct statement. "I'm not pulling over. I'm a driver and that's what I do. That's my purpose. I don't need to switch. I can get him where he's going." As the bus veered toward the side of the road, an aerial sniper landed a shot, executing Falsworth. The bus shot off the freeway into open space for about 10 seconds before crashing into a lower lane. From all eyewitness reports, the vehicle exploded in a fiery blaze. There were no survivors, and many bodies were never discovered or declared missing. One report from a bystander, a 26-year-old woman driving in the next lane over who was suspended upside down by her seatbelt, was of particular interest. She stated witnessing a second identical bus rise out of the smoke and pull away from the wreck. It opened its door with a large mechanical sound and remained still. Out of the flames came a single burning silhouette shaped like a human corpse. This corpse was said to have entered the bus and sat down. The door to the bus closed, and the vehicle pulled away, smoothly navigating the pileup before disappearing. Follow-up attempts in testing SCP-342 resulted in more direct replies to Foundation experiments. In one event, Dr. Haber's neck was caught in the door while trying to help a subject exit the train. As it pulled away from the station, it struck a stone wall, decapitating him. Dr. Gettram, another team member, attempted an experiment in which the ticket would be redeemed, but would not board the vehicle, using himself as subject. He kept a journal of the effects, resulting in a year of avoiding public transportation, severe anxiety, neurosis, paranoia, and a newfound phobia of roads. It eventually turned into a whole rejection of any form of vehicle transportation, until one morning when his wife woke to the sound of a large vehicle parking outside. She heard Dr. Gettram say, "I guess it's time to go," followed by his departure from the house. Neighbors reported being woken up by the same loud sound of a large vehicle's door opening and closing, followed by its engine as it drove off. A suitcase, filled with Gettram's clothing, was found by the side of the road. A final report is included in the article for SCP-342 from Dr. Clef's personal log. 3 days ago, Dr. Gunther and I were going through some of his old files for archival when he came across the file for SCP-342. Gunther removed 342 from its envelope and laid it on its desk as we discussed the object's history, as well as his own regrets for the number of lives senselessly lost in the research on this project. Our discussion was cut short by the fact that we had made an appointment to watch a showing of Repo the Genetic Opera with Drs. Wright and Kondraki later that evening. I noticed that Dr. Gunther became somewhat perturbed shortly after presenting his ticket at the door, and asked me to go on ahead and save his seat for him. He arrived shortly after and sat down next to us, although he seemed preoccupied and distressed throughout the show. Given the subject matter, I believe this to be a normal reaction to the grotesqueries on stage. Afterward, as Kondraki, Wright, and I discussed retiring to a bar for drinks, Dr. Gunther stated that it was time for him to leave, handing me an envelope and warning me to keep it safe. He thanked me for a splendid evening and wished me the best in my future endeavors. He then boarded a taxicab, which sped off unusually quickly into the night. Upon opening the envelope, I noticed there were 2 identical tickets for his seat at the musical, one of which transformed into a $20 bill as we approached a trendy bar with a $20 cover charge. Realizing what had happened, I proceeded rapidly back to the place where Dr. Gunther had boarded the taxi and ran back down the street the taxi had taken, followed closely by my confused colleagues. The street, as it turned out, was an alleyway that ended in a brick wall 50 feet from the actual street. No trace of Dr. Gunther has been seen since that time. It is my belief that SCP-342 took the form of Dr. Gunther's ticket to the musical, redeemed itself at the door, and doomed him to the same fate as its prior victims. Dr. Gunther, upon opening his wallet to purchase a beverage, realized what had happened and returned to the front door to recover 342. Given the SCP's prior murderous history, he must have made the decision not to inform us of the incident, keeping us safely ignorant for the time being. When I think of the amount of mental fortitude it must have required to remain calm during the musical, knowing his inevitable fate, I am struck with a sense of loss at the passing of an inestimably valuable asset to the Foundation. For this reason, I am requesting that this file be permanently sealed and no further experiments be carried out on this item. And that, dear listeners, is all the time we have tonight for the Ghostwriter's Tales. But it is not quite the end of our visit. I have 2 announcements, the second of which is of particular interest to you. First, for those who didn't know, I'm celebrating 9 years of October on Nightmind with a limited run exclusive vinyl figure, the very first I've ever done, and probably the very last. It's only available until October 29th, and it will only go into production if 500 pre-orders are secured by then. It's incredible in its detailing, entirely to my design approval by an artist I trust, and while a pre-order minimum is needed to produce them, there is no cap to the amount that will be produced. So if you pre-order one and 500 or more are secured, you get one, period. The sales of this vinyl figure help me out a lot. It's an amazing item to celebrate October on Nightmind, of course, but sales of merchandise like this directly supports my efforts. They secure the time and resources I need to empower the next phase of content and creativity on the channel, like getting some of the help I need to get you more Nightmind more often, and fund equipment upgrades to improve workflow and capabilities while adding security to the vision of not relying on sponsors. So if you wanted a plush but couldn't get one, this is an item celebrating October that's easier to get, and your pre-order helps everyone else who pre-ordered get theirs. If you've enjoyed the SCP Vault series or Nightmind in general, please consider picking one up. The link is on screen and in the video description. Thank you for listening and pre-ordering if you do. Again, it helps me out a lot. It's for this October only, and it does mean a lot to me. Secondly, those who know October on Nightmind know there's always more to enjoy in the month. While our time over here may be short under current circumstances, festivities may continue in more interesting ways. And because I like to make sure that announcements in general are available through this avenue, I urge you to take a look at my Twitter account to know more, seen on screen here. The link is also in the video description. Go ahead, poke your head in, take a peek. You'll see, it'll be a fun time, and you'll catch a lot of announcements from here on out about all sorts of things that I might be doing. Thanks for sticking around for those 2 announcements. This concludes our visit tonight, as well as a reading of some choice selections from the Ghostwriter manuscripts. As always, thanks to the authors and contributors to the SCP articles. Thank you for listening, and major thanks to all my supporters on Patreon, who empower my ability to keep doing Nightmind and the Nightmind Index for new and undiscovered unfiction projects. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and I'll be seeing you again real soon for more October fun. Until next time, sleep tight.